I'm assuming it was amicable, but if it wasn't, go for the kidneys. So here's the deal. We have a client who needs a Windows workstation set up at their office to run some Windows processes. They also need a Linux server set up there running some Linux processes. They also have a phone appliance handling all of their phone calls. So what's a guy to do? Set up 3 computers? What, you think I got a money tree in the backyard? Nah, we're gonna use a hypervisor. With a hypervisor, we get to install all 3 of these systems on one physical machine and save 2 machines worth of money. Doesn't that sound great? Let me show you how it's done. Okay, so if you've heard of Oracle's VirtualBox or VMware's Fusion or Parallels, you may have already an idea of what a hypervisor is. We're running a operating system within another operating system, or an operating system containerized within a computer. There are 2 types of hypervisors, just like diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 runs on bare metal, which means the whole purpose of the machine is to run a hypervisor and containerize different systems. Type 2 runs on an operating system already. So this is where Mac users will use Parallels to virtualize Windows within it so that they can run Windows software. Today we're working with XCP-ng. This is a type 1 hypervisor, so we're installing it right onto the bare metal. So there are a couple of things that we have to go do in the BIOS before we get started. Let's take a look. Go here to, okay, so the big thing that we have to do is we have to turn on virtualization on the BIOS itself. So we're using an AMD Ryzen build. So this is the SVM mode, and we need to enable this. If you're running an Intel build, this will be a VT-X or a VT-D setting in your BIOS. You just have to make sure that they're enabled before you start, or things don't run well at all. I think that might be it. So we're going to say, we're going to enable that. We're going to take our installer key, throw that in so that we can boot to that. Okay, so we've got lots of fancy options. We're going to choose the fancy install option. And away we go. Okay. Yeah, we're going to install a QWERTY keyboard layout to this so that we don't have to guess what we're... Okay. Checking for existing installs. There's nothing there. We accept a bunch of EULA stuff that we've probably read. Okay, so here's one of the options. We can install to one or the other. We've got 2 terabyte drives in there right now. We're actually going to set up a software RAID so that we're going to mirror our setup so that we don't lose everything. We're going to create a RAID array between the 2 internal drives. Yep, that's what we want. Create the RAID array so that we won't lose our data if a hard drive dies. Now, there's a number of complex ways that we can set up a hypervisor. If we've got large data sets, we can actually have just the systems themselves running on the hypervisor and actually connect it to a SAN storage array, which would give us the ability to have very large VMs or large drives on our VMs. We're going to stay real nice and simple. We're just going to do the hypervisor, which means the entire system is going to also be stored on that box as well. Okay, we've got our RAID array, so we're going to install it there. We're going to do thin provisioning, so we're going to use ext instead of LVM. We're going to install from our local media. We're going to skip verification. We're going to put in a password. For the moment, we're going to pull DHCP. We're not using a VLAN. Okay. We're going to, DNS will be automatic. Give it a, okay. We are in America. We are in Edmonton. We are going to use, local time will be NTP, good. Okay, we're going to NTP. DHCP is fine for NTP. Away we go, install. I'm going on break. All right, looks like we're up and running. Let's shut this down, shove it in the server closet, and configure the rest. Okay, so we got the server booted up there. We're back on Hot Rod here. This is where we get to actually provision and work with all of our VMs. We're gonna launch XCP-ng Center. This is what connects to the server and administers everything. So here we go, connecting to some stuff. Okay, so we've got our stack here. That's great. We're gonna add a new server. That server is at 43 root, and the password, and it finds it. There's our hypervisor. So you can see we've got 64 gigs right now of memory in there. We've got 16 CPUs all ready to go. It's time to install our first VM, but to do that we need the install media. Instead of having an actual disk that we have to connect to the server or a USB stick that we're going to plug in, we're going to connect to a network share that has all of our images to it. We're going to say new storage. This is going to be a Windows file sharing, just a Samba share. This is going to be our ISO library. Yes, that's what it is, and it's at, let's try that. Try and create it, connected. Okay, so now what we see is, we see that we've got an ISO library connected there, and if we look on storage, there's all of the images that we can use to install VMs. Now we've got our ISO library connected. We're going to go to Skynet. We're going to create a new VM there. This one's going to be Windows 10 64-bit. Yep. We're going to be calling it Win10, so we know what it is. We're going to use the 2004 UEFI boot. Yep. We're going to put it on to Skynet. We're going to give it 4 CPUs, but that's on one socket. 4 gigs will be enough for now. We can give it more later if we want. 32, a little bit small. We're going to give it 128 for now. That's going to be on the local storage there. This isn't going to be a Windows machine that needs a ton of storage, so the 1 terabyte we should still be okay with. Next, the network's connected. Yeah, the normal network that we've got for our LAN, all of our details, and create now, go. So what this is going to do, it's going to go mount the ISO of the Windows 10 installer out of our storage server. It's going to create, there it is, a shell for Windows 10. And if we click over to console, we can see we've mounted the Windows 10 DVD, and we're starting the install process. This install process looks like any other installing of Windows 10. Goes through the same screens. It's just all virtualized in the hypervisor. Here we go, copying over, getting things ready, and it's about this time that it's time for another break. We're going to install Ubuntu. Update the new installer. Yeah, do that. And we're also going to do our free PBX phone appliance. We're going to install all 3 all at the same time. Install there. We're going to give a couple of, and we're going to give a couple of gigs of RAM to that guy. We're going to make a new virtual disk, PBX, and we're going to give that, we'll give that say 32 gigs because we don't need too much. All right, Windows is almost done installing. Ubuntu, free PBX, away we go installing. Yeah, all 3 installers all running at the same time. Okay, so Windows is up and running, and the way that we would be connecting to and using it is through RDP, or remote desktop. So let's just go make sure that that's turned on. Allow remote users. We're on 167. Okay, so we're gonna go connect 167. Okay. Yep. Okay. So, remoted in. Actually going to perform fairly snappy through remote desktop because we've actually thrown a fair bit of resources at it. You can see we've got our 4 gigs of RAM there. We're going to be increasing that shortly, but we've got 2 processors of our Ryzen 7. We should increase that as well. Let's go and increase the RAM that we got here. Let's throw 48 gigs at it. Okay, we'll give it 8 CPUs like that. Okay, and then when we start this guy back up, just like that, we've got more resources. The other thing that makes a hypervisor really fantastic to use, especially one that is open source like XPNG, is that we're able to grab snapshots of the entire machine. So what this means is we'll go over here, we're going to take a snapshot of our Windows machine. We're going to call this fresh and clean. Okay, what this is going to do, it's going to snapshot the disk of that VM, which means in the future, if anything goes wrong with the system, so files get corrupted, you make some terrible mistakes installing some malware, whatever you have it, you can revert back to the original snapshot, and it's as if you never changed a thing. It's like the day we first provisioned it. The other thing that this lets you do is schedule snapshots. So you can have nightly snapshots of, for example, a file server, and if something ever happens that the files get corrupted, you have multiple points that you can go backwards and restore it to. Okay, so we're booted back up again, which means if we go back to our remote desktop, we should be able to connect back to that VM. So we've restarted now, we've given it a little bit more resources, and when we go and take a look, yeah, so we've got 48 gigs of RAM, we've got 8 cores dedicated to this machine. Let's go take a look at what else we got here. Ubuntu, we're going to shortly be able to snapshot as a freshly provisioned server. FreePBX, our phone server, is going to be ready shortly. And we've saved 2 machines worth of money. So hopefully this explains a little bit about what a hypervisor is and why you might use it and how it might save you some money. So get out there and start hypervising. See you next week. Doesn't that so close. Okay, so we've got I don't know what we've got.